For those of you new to this channel, my name's Dan Johnson. I spent 15 years at Boeing and Amazon doing everything I was taught, taking on extra projects, working on weekends, and maxing out my 401k so I could retire early. Then 3 years ago, I hit 40 and found my career and income growth were starting to flatline. So I decided to sit down with a financial advisor to lock in my retirement plan. I expected to hear how well I was doing from all those years of sacrifice to max out the 401k. Instead, I heard the opposite. I was told that the retirement I dreamed of wasn't really possible. Instead, I had three options. If I wanted to retire the way I desired, I could do one, work longer. Two, I could sacrifice even more today and save more so I could retire when I want. Or three, I could lower my expectations, which essentially meant moving somewhere where there was a lower cost of living, away from the friends and family I spent decades building relationships. Exactly the people I wanted to spend more time with in retirement. I refused to accept those options, and what I discovered changed everything. And now I'm on a mission to educate my fellow corporate America professionals about the financial options available to you so you can generate the maximum amount of income in retirement using the least amount of dollars. So today, I'm going to share one more reason why the tax rate you pay in retirement might be higher than the tax rate you're paying today, which is not something most financial professionals will advise. Currently, we're in a war with Iran. We're supporting a war in Ukraine, and we're seemingly in a Cold War with China, who is threatening to attack Taiwan in 2027. What do all these conflicts have to do with the taxes you'll pay in retirement? Actually, more than you'd think. Because as one of the largest line items on the federal budget, defense spending is considered discretionary, which means there isn't a specific tax funding it. So if the government wants to spend more on the military, it only has three ways to do it. One, cut other discretionary funding, like education or healthcare, not things you hear getting removed a lot. Two, take on more debt. Or three, increase the revenue it gets from taxes. Either way, it is likely to impact how much income those of us in corporate America will end up having in retirement. Congress submitted its 2027 budget and it included $1.15 trillion in defense spending. That's $250 billion more over 2026. To put that in perspective, the only time in American history the U.S. increased defense spending more was during World War II. Are we in a world war now? On top of that, Congress is requesting an $87 billion emergency request tied to the Iran conflict, funded not by new tax revenue, but by adding it straight to the national debt. But remind me, how do we pay off that debt? And these funding requests aren't just being driven because we have a Republican Congress. A bipartisan congressional commission recently concluded that the U.S. faces security threats not seen since 1945 and explicitly called for military spending commensurate with the national effort seen during the Cold War. And Admiral Samuel Paparo, commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, recently submitted a 121-page report to Congress, stating 2027 is a hard deadline. That's the year Beijing forces could be ready to move on Taiwan, which is the same year Chinese President Xi Jinping told his military to be ready to do so. And he urged lawmakers to approve the budget surge. Maybe these bills won't get funded in full, but it seems obvious the defense budget will be increased. And even a partial increase puts us on a path we've been on before, and history shows us exactly how it played out. We don't even have to look back that far to see how the federal government handled a similar situation. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the US was simultaneously fighting a land war while staring down a super rival with global ambitions. At the height of the Vietnam War in 1967 and 68, defense spending swallowed over 50% of every dollar the government collected. And throughout the early part of the Cold War, it consumed between 45% and 60% of all federal tax revenue. Compare that to today, where defense sits at about 18% of tax revenue. But here's the part I really want those of us in corporate America to sit with. The tax rates that existed during that era were dramatically higher than what you pay today. In the 60s and 70s, a married couple earning what would be $100,000 in today's dollars paid nearly four times more in federal tax income than that same household pays today. High defense spending and high tax rates existed in the same era because one funds the other. Critics of the proposed defense buildup are already pointing this out, warning that a permanent $1.15 trillion defense baseline financed through debt rather than Cold War era tax rates will cause the federal debt to spiral. Something will eventually have to give, and historically, when it has, the tax code has been the lever Congress reaches for. So for those of us in corporate America, here's how that really impacts our retirement income. If most of your money is sitting in a 401k or traditional IRA, every dollar in those accounts will be taxed as ordinary income when you pull it out. You don't get to lock in today's low rates. You pay whatever the rate is in the year you withdraw. Tax rates today are near their lowest level in decades, but the last time the U.S. faced a combination of sustained geopolitical threats, heavy defense spending, and fiscal pressure, the tax rates had to rise to fund that spend. And even if Washington keeps pushing off raising taxes by borrowing instead of taxing, that debt doesn't disappear. It just means the tax bill comes later, potentially right at the time you're trying to retire. The question isn't whether this will happen. Nobody can tell you that with certainty. The question is whether it's worth building a retirement plan that doesn't depend on today's rates being permanent. If your retirement plan is built entirely around a 401k, you're making a bet on where tax rates land 20 to 30 years from now. That might be the right bet, but are you 100% confident that will be the case? The data says this: we are potentially entering a sustained period of elevated defense spending, funded against a backdrop of record national debt and historically low tax rates. The last time these conditions existed, tax rates on ordinary working households were dramatically higher than today, and they stayed that way not for a short period of time, but for decades. The good news is there are tools built to structure your retirement plan so the income you generate isn't fully exposed to whatever Congress decides to set tax rates at 5, 10, or 20 years from now. For corporate America professionals who want to think through what a tax-diversified retirement income strategy actually looks like and stress test it against different tax rate scenarios, DM me to schedule a free strategy session.